Hey people, I'm going to take a look at the English version of this book, the Orbis Pictus. I'm going to start with a little story to show how I was sent here, but it's from John Amos, and it was written in 1620s, just after the King James Bible. And it's been edited many, many times in many languages, and it was outlawed and burnt in many, many places for a long time. And so you can find it now online. But I'm going to start with a little story about how I come back to this. I had put a pornographic cover on my last movie to warn people of what the subject matter was. But YouTube didn't like it, so I had to change it. So now it's a cartoon. But this is the main word here, and it was only used twice. I thought I'd look it up. And it's fucking not all of these words. It comes up 120 different ways, and just a couple of these are the same word. But I seen it come up the same in the book of Amos, and I went to look at that, to make sure. And it's talking about, who's fucking you from a hurry. Who's in a hurry. It's ETS. It's on. Who's in a hurry. It's on. And so I read that. I want to get a little better context, so I went to the whole chapter, to read from the beginning of this poem. Starts here in 10. And I was reading on down, and I seen where it called out the name to John Amos. John Amos, he's the father of education. And so I clicked on Amos to see, how many times that John Amos come up. And I noticed another word that I wanted to look at. And it said, and from the, and said me the Tate, backwards, forwards, the Tate. The Tate Ra, almost, the tater. A-E is a diphthong, meaning ash. And so sometimes you can read this as rash, to rash Amos. And I seen it was talking about a basket of summer fruit. I haven't been to the book of Amos in a long time, and so I thought I'd go check it out. You can look up the book of Amos Pictus or John Amos on Wikipedia, and it'll tell you some story about he started writing right after the King James version come out. It's called this book of Orbis Pictus, and it's in several languages, but it puts the different languages up beside the Latin to teach Latin. But he was part of the church, and this came out after King James version. And so there's some information, or there's a lot of information there. If you know nothing, it's the best place to start. But it's easy to see there's some things hidden. And so I'm going to hit on some things in this book. And I'm going to start here with this other diphthong. And you can see it's, he'll put a picture up, and he'll put it in Latin and in Old English, and there'd be two columns, the Old English and the Latin. Most of it's correct, but some of it you can see there's some stuff hidden. And so the eye, the oculus, to vid it, to visual, the colors, to seeth the colors. And what is white or black, album, vel etrum, or green or blue, verdi or co-rulum. And so, the way my mind works, I look at this as the ka is to give. And then this is a diphthong. And I don't look at diphthongs as a sound. I look at them as a meaning. And I just looked this up last week, and the diphthong OE, it comes from this old odal, and it had a meaning of nobility. It come from this old letter here, and the old images, when you see somebody wearing this, that's what it meant, was nobility. And so, here the blue is to give nobility the rule from the blue bloods. So this is another diphthong here, this AE, and it's to yammer, to make the word me the tater, the dictator. I'm the one with the say, the tate of Ra Ash. And so AE, that comes from the ancient Aya. All the writings, Aya was Enki, was the god. But this also comes from the old rune Ash. And so the Latin says it means mouth. But in the old Anglo-Saxon, they said it was ash. And it meant God, the ash tree. In Norse mythology, it was Yggdrasil, known as the gallows of Odin, when it talks about the horse of Odin. But the last couple movies, I showed you where the gallows was it's where your word legal come from. The gallows was the god of law. That's where your gallows comes from. This page has changed a little bit since I've been to it a couple years ago. I don't know where it would say again that the ash meant God, but here, it's Azuz, Ansuz is God, or Asham, the ear of wheat. The ear of wheat is Virgo. So that kind of gives this word Ra as, the first Aya, the first word of God. And said, me, the tater, the word of God, I say the word of God, to yammer me, the tate of Rash, the first ash. And so, back in the day, I've told you a couple of movies ago, there was no Libra. And it was Virgo holding the ear of corn. And so I just know this yesterday, that Virgo's not holding the corn here. And this is when they have, the La Balancia here, the balance. And I think I read somewhere where this used to be a slingshot one day, or maybe it was even a bra. Maybe it was Virgo's bra. But I was reading, when I was reading in that in Ezekiel more, it aimed me toward, that story when God picked him up and brought him to a mountain, and he saw a bronze-skinned man and holding a flax, and it describes it some. And so I was looking at these lowers because it also talks about this easel, and I noticed this here, the Libro, the Libro, and it almost looks like a snake, but that was a whip. That's a whip. That's the crack end of the whip over here at the Libro, at the legal, at the justice. And this is where the word Libro comes from, the justice, the crack of the whip. And so they'll say, Libro is a book, but this by no means represents any type of book. Not even a scroll, because the way the hashes are here, it's showing that it's a round object. It's a whip. And so this is what I was working on. I found a bunch of information here that helps understand the beginning of Ezekiel 40. When I had got sidetracked, I do it all the time. So this is it's a long book, and and it's probably the best place to go. It has pictures and numbers, and if you search, you could find a lot of these books. Some of the pages have been removed, I'm pretty sure, in this one, but some of them have better pictures, and you might want to pull two of them up to compare the English and Latin to maybe the German book, or they come in several languages, and you can see better pictures, and you have to read it slowly and examine every word, because you can see there's some things that they're still trying to hide here. But I think it's got over 100 pictures, and he describes the picture with the words, and it was public education, it was grade school books. And so there are still hidden meanings in the pictures that he doesn't give all up here, and you have to have a better idea of the Latin and slow down and don't take their word for it to catch. But it starts with the magister and the pure. The pure child doesn't know anything yet, doesn't understand. And let me be wise. The disc of Sophia, the wisdom. The disc of Sophia is the moon. And then it'll give you, the Latin names. And you can see, the cornix, is the cornicator. And the crows love the corn, And if you want to find a lost cornfield, wake up early in the morning, watch which way the crows are going. They're going to find your corn. And so there's a lot of hidden information in here. Like I said, I haven't read this in a couple years, and there's a lot of most of the others have much better pictures or easier to understand, but this one is kind of dim in all of them. I've never been able to find a real good, clear old picture of this. Everything's been changed. But you see in this word for water, the aqua, that's where your word squaw come from. As an Indian woman is a squaw, and that's the ancient language, and the water was the woman. You can see here in the air, that a whirlwind turneth itself in a round compass. The turbo is it's a whirlwind. And to agit itself, to turn itself is close, but in a round compass, is in gyrum, and gyrum means to turn around. A gyro spins into spin, not necessarily a round compass. And so, like I say, this is one of the words that I see in the Bible all the time. In the Hebrew, and they say it means, they give it several meanings, but behind, but no, it means to turn around. The gyro is in the earth, gyroscopes on its poles, on its axis, and so that's one of the words that they're trying to hide. And so this was written, just right after King James, so this was part of the attempt to change the language. But, the noobs, this is pronounced V, noobs. And you see it here, the two clouds over here by the mountain. And one of them is the little N-U-V-O, Nuvoletta, La Nuvoletta. And one of them is La Nuvola. And so this is the little cloud. And this word here interprets more today than Nuvoletta as a little speech bubble, a little cloud or a speech bubble. And so, a lot of our words today, the B and the V mix up, and like I say, in the Hebrew, it's because it's the same letter, and just a dot, makes it a B. And so in the mountains, in the valleys, a valley is the the V is also Vav, the W, and it's the wall of this. And you can't have a valley without having mountains to wall the two sides. It's the valleys, the wall of this. And so this is the thing that the wall surrounds. And in the metals, what is hard is more durable than hard. It's the durable from. And just a couple movies ago, I showed you where the lapides was the stones. I forget what they changed that to. Like I try not to study their interpretation. But yeah, you can see it, either way it comes up, the lapides or the small stone broken to bits. And a lapides is just ordinary stone, an obscure lapides stone. And a lodestone, is the Magnus. And so it's it attracts and attracted of ferrum, of iron, and the lodestone. Like a couple movies ago, I was talking about the moon. When it loads, it's empty and it's loading. That's where you were, for the new moon, the load. It's a new moon and it's filling. It's waxing to draweth. As the ruby is red, but the sapphire is blue. The sapphire is the Sophias, the wisdom. The blue is the moon. In just recent movie, I showed you where the arbo means tree or tree-like, and they say it means number 4. But yeah, every way, the arbo is the base word for tree. And it's the arbo, the tree from, the shoot to a tree, the fructix of the arbrum. And from a root, is the radius, the radius of the tree. And so the root ball of a tree is about the same as, the head of the tree. And you see, the fruits of the trees, the fructus of arborum, it's not an E anymore, it's a UM. And it's the first, the tree, and then R, first, connect from. That's the first trees you need to plant is your fruit trees. They don't put out until your grandchildren are here. And the flowers, come from the floors. They grow low in the forest. And so you see in Genesis 1, the trees bearing fruit, was Pru. And so, all your fruit, your forages, everything will have the fruit and the forages, the fruituses, And so this IVs, it's going to be disguised in the Hebrew. The V is going to be the B, and the E is going to be the I, the Abby, and they say it means father, in the Hebrew, the IVs. So it's talking about the fathers, it's talking about the birds. And so your tame fowls, are the aves of the domestic, the house, the cash, to stash away cash, of the home cash, the ones that's been domesticated. So when it talks about birds that hunt the fields and woods, the campsters and the sylvesters, and that comes from the story of I think you find it in the mother of Romulus and Remus, and Sylvester was the spirit of the woods. And the waterfowls, the aves, the birds of aquatic, are of the water, of the aqua, tai, cash, or the aqua tai, to give a power, life. To give the power of life, the cash, where they're at, where they live, what gives them the power of life, the waters. And so this is where your word Hermes come from. The flying vermin is is the insect. But your crawling vermin are the repenta, to crawling. When your husband's been out drinking all night long, when he comes back, he's repenting. He comes crawling back. And so you see it doubled up here in the word for the serpents and the creepy things of this repents and repetilla. The creepy things are the repet. So you see that they didn't have a single word that they could interpret amphibia with. Creatures that live as well by waters, by land, and it's not quite right. Via, that's via. And so, that means shipping via. Are you going by water, via train? Is how you get there. And it's, it's the journey, the time and the place. The time and the way is via. Ambidextrous, dexterous, is the right side. And so ambidextrous, somebody who can write with either left or right hand, who can work with either hand. And so, it means either way of via, to get through. Either way, either way, via, to get through. And the same with this shellfish, the conch, the conic, the conical, and then the ash, the power life. And so that would only be, a conical shaped shellfish, a conch. It wouldn't include all shellfish. But the murex is known as the purple fish, and they said that they had all been extinct, many years ago. But that's where the purple dye come from, the king's, the royal purple. And it was outlawed for anybody else to wear that. And it's not because of the colors, because that murex clam used that as a sedative. He's crawling around in this shell. How's he going to get something to eat? He sprays his purple dye underwater. It's not just a dye, it's a drug. It's a sedative. And it sedates a fish, and then he can carry his whole house and crawl up on it. But it's a very, very powerful sedative. And so it was a lot less about the color than it was the purpose. And this word for the serpent in the tree here, they call it the devil. But it's the day of all see under. The day of all see under. And you can see it right here, and they were condemned to a misery and death with all their posterity. And so this was the day of all see under. Before that, the man would live forever until the diabolo, the day of all see under. They saw under the matrix. And this 7 ages of man, septum is also the separate, septum, to cut in the middle. And so 7 is the middle of 13. We have 13 moons per year, and 7 is the center. And the septum is to separate. And so the ash and the tates, the controlling mouth, the God's controlling mouth of hominies. And so a big part of this book was to change the language, because people were learning. Printing press was reinvented. But first you have a infant, and as a boy he is pure, and as a youth you add all essence, and as a young man, they're juvenile. They don't act right then, bunch of juvies. You know, when a woman goes from a maid to a woman, you know, she's going from a virgin to a mueller. She's pulling the load then. And so the soul of a man is the anima of homines. And so anima, you know, animation means more is to give life to, animate, to give life to. And so the soul is what gives life to the body. And you see down here in the mind, you know, is the animo. You know, the mind is not part of the body, but it's part of the soul. And you know, the anger, you know, is the irate. You know, the grief and suffering is the dollar in passy one. Passy one, the dollar and passy one, the grief and suffering. So this is about a third the way through this book. It's a huge book, and there's a lot of information. And it's not all correct, but you can get a lot of information if you study it closely. And you know, I would almost say it's the best place to start, but first you have to start and realize that they're trying to change the language all through here. They don't want you to be able to read the ancient languages, and the whole purpose is to try to change it so you can read this Latin and not the Hebrew or the Greek. Alright, I'm going to cut this off here. Good day.